Everybody all right? Introductions, I'm Andy Hine, Art Design. I'm a principal here at Delaware Street. It's downtown Indianapolis, Indiana, right next to the Gold Building, for those of you that may be familiar with downtown Indianapolis. Tonight, I have John Voigt, also an architect, and Jess Miller. The three of us, I'm going to take 30 seconds for introduction so you understand where that comes from, what kind of work we work on. The three of us have currently been helping Indiana University complete a $50 million renovation to the School of Public Health. For those of you that are Purdue fans, we have laboratory projects on the Purdue campus, and not to discriminate, we also do work for Ball State and Indiana State. We also do a fair amount of county and city government work, both new builds and in terms of historic renovation. So we're excited about this project because it's certainly in our wheelhouse, but there are things that we need to talk about. As you look at what we're proposing for the agenda, I'm going to touch briefly on what we know and what we don't know, some factors influencing the project, including some historic items. When we note continuum of design, we're talking about, as we take a look at this project, there are opportunities to either mock up to things that look historic or not to do that. That's also respectful when you don't copy something. So we'll give you examples of both. We're not here to, as the mayor said, to grind down on that, but to let you know that actually there are several things possible. We're also going to give you 4 what we think to be very viable options to move forward. So those 4 options have a magnitude of cost associated with them. I'd be glad to talk costs later on with anybody on that front. And then we have a brief summary, and then we'll turn it over to the mayor and the council. Does that make sense to everyone in terms of an agenda? Is that okay? No, go ahead.
All right, so good evening, everyone, and in advance, I apologize to the people behind me that I'm talking with my back to you, and as someone who has spent 24 plus years working in a school district, I appreciate board meetings that end at 8:15. That's an awesome thing. So this evening, as Andy mentioned, really what we're here to try to understand this evening is 2 things in my mind. One, to make sure that we're all working from a common set of knowledge and information about the building, about what the options are. I suspect that everyone in this room, both in front of me and behind me, probably knows part of what we're presenting tonight, but there's probably very few people that know all of it. I'm sure there's a few, but there's probably not everyone in this room knows all the things that are influencing the decisions that need to be made about this building. The other thing is to help understand that the ranges that Andy mentioned, the options that are available. First of all, there's a very good chance that the final option that's decided on, whatever that might be, is probably not one of the 4 that's going to be presented here tonight, right? It's probably going to be some collection of options, a hybrid of the different options that we're sharing. These are really, what Jess will share with you in a moment, are really intended to kind of help describe what the envelope of options are and what those things mean to the city of Martinsville. As Andy mentioned, I have a project for those of you that have played basketball in the Hyper. I'm currently in the midst of trying to put an elevator inside of a building that's 115 years old and having to chisel through the bottom of it. So lots of things are possible. Almost anything's possible with money, right? But lots of different options are possible. So one thing that is a factor that we need to understand as to how it influences this project is the fact that this building is in fact inside of a historic district. I'm not sure that everyone knows that, but now we all have that. One of the components of that is that there's actually a city ordinance that was passed 2009, is that right? That really guides, it established the historic downtown district, and it guides what can be done and how it can be done. And there are some hurdles to making modifications to a historic building or a building that's inside that district. Ironically enough, the library, is that inside or just outside? It's actually just inside, isn't it? It's right there. So the library is an example. 1916, 1912, and it has had an addition end of the building, the third bay there, you can see for the people in the back and for the people in the front. That's my mouse. That is an addition to the building. I don't know that we've been able to verify for sure when it was added. And that building, we've actually found other examples of this building's architect. Actually, one of them we'll share with you here in a little bit. This is a flow chart on historic preservation standards. Now, our understanding is that any work that's going to be happening with this project, once the city makes a determination of what the direction needs to be, but that the monies would be local. One thing that's important to realize, and the reason why the lower left-hand corner of that slide is grayed out, is if at some point in time, state or federal dollars start to come into play, the hurdles start to get more difficult to work through. If it's only local dollars, then you're only having to work with your current city ordinance. But if we get state and federal dollars involved, it would become more complicated. You can see more of those circles that are grayed out there. Okay? I lost my mouse. There it is. Another thing that is, we've been working on this project, one of the challenges about working within a building of this vintage is once you start pulling on the sweater, it starts to get to be very, very expensive very, very quickly. And you can wind up in a situation where you have committed and you just can't stop. So something like, we'll call it paint up, fix up, right? To change the finishes out in this space and the other spaces that are in this building, that is not a particularly big deal. It's money. I don't mean to diminish the value of the money, but it can be done without incurring a lot of additional systems that you will wind up encountering, okay? That's what's represented by the single dollar sign. You'd like to think this curve was linear, right? You'd like to think it started at the lower left and just went to a straight line to the upper right. The reality of it is the moment you start to get into changing anything having to do with HVAC, anything having to do with electrical, anything having to do with plumbing, all those systems are going to very, very quickly trip you into other requirements. And so that's why you're seeing this curve that's on the screen saying, hey, in this building, we can do a fair amount of finish type work, carpet, ceilings, paint, at a relatively low expense, but very, very quickly it will start to get very expensive and you'll wind up committing having to do a whole lot more work. To use the example of the School of Public Health, I'm working in the 1915 gymnasium, the original gym in that building. And there are some things that need to be fixed in that building that are they're very, very difficult to fix because it's an old building, and when you start to get into new systems, the university opened up bids the other days and it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 million to renovate that building for HVAC only. So very, very quickly, the point of this is just to know if the intention is to just renovate this building, it can get to be very, very expensive very quickly. That's not a judgment as to whether or not you want to do that. I came from a school district, I worked for 24 years and wound up being the chief operations officer. We committed to our site. There were lots of people in our community that said, build a new high school. We want a new high school. And we made the determination that we were going to stay on that property because the high school was important. The high school had been at 1000 South Odell Street since the 50s. That's where it was going to stay. That's a judgment. That's a perfectly valid judgment. But with that comes some other things, like it's going to cost a little bit more to spend, to stay at that site, if that makes sense.
Can I add one other thing before Jess, and then we're going to transition to Jess. On that notion of cost, we needed to, with our 4 options, be apples to apples. So what we did is we put the same amount of cost, and so on the existing building, if it's a part of that option, we have been apples to apples in terms of the level of quality that we would go to, and that would be a finish type of update. And the reason for that is what John was saying. What happens is once we get engineering involved, and I have a lot of great engineering friends, but once we start to reconfigure, let's say just for the sake of argument, we were going to reconfigure the first floor of this, we have to, the state of Indiana in a public building compels us to take that in and have it engineered from an HVAC standpoint, and we have no choice because we're taking that through the state. So what we've done is we've said, we think it's probably more reasonable from a cost perspective to not go to that level And so let's take this room for an example. We would not be changing any kind of structure or breakdown of this room. We would just be doing new carpet and finishes and that type of thing. That's our mindset for this building consistently throughout in this situation. Can that be argued later on? Absolutely. But what we're trying to do is give you apples to apples so you can get to that decision. Once that decision's made, then we can plow in and you might say, hey, we really want to take this 1,500 square feet and we want to redo that. That's fair. But I just wanted to let you know from a cost perspective what we're trying to do. What we're really trying to do right now is be apples to apples so we can give you good data for judgment, not make some call on myself. We're really not making a value judgment. We don't have a problem if you want to spend more money than what we've allocated, but that we've been consistent. Does that make sense to everybody before Jess shares what we're talking about? Thanks.
Nor are we saying that one of these options is particularly better than another. Here's 4 examples of existing buildings. The one on the upper left is the one that's actually the same architect as this building. This is a library up in Thorntown. And to the untrained eye, if we didn't tell you which part of it was the original building and which part was the addition, you might not really be able to tell the difference. It's a pretty seamless transition. It really is trying to mimic. This is if you wanted to add on to this building, could you mimic it? Yes, you could. It's probably not our preference, but it can be done, obviously, and it can be done successfully. The one on the lower left, I have not been here, but I bet there's a few people in this room that may have been here. This is down in Bloomington. This is an example of a building that has got some historic value to it, but it actually had some pretty significant structural issues. And if you go inside that building, what you find is some things were done. The property owner said, we want to keep this building. It has some value to us. It has some history to it, but we want to make sure it's usable for its new functions. And so it's got some new structure inside of it that allows it to perform to modern standards. In the upper right is an example where, yes, we're adding on to the building. The left-hand side is obviously a very old building that has architectural value to it. And in this case, the designers and the owner of this project said, we really want to make a stark difference. To compare it to the library, you can tell the left-hand side is a more modern addition than the right-hand side. Now, in the library's perspective across the street there, as I look out the window, they were really taking cues from the original building. In this case, it's a completely different element. It's a glass box sitting next to a very, very refined 100-plus-year-old building. The lower right-hand is the option that says, we're just going to build a new building, okay? And in this particular case, I am going to guess, I think this is actually over in Ohio, if I remember this example. I'm going to guess that window pattern probably to some architectural buff. They can probably find that pattern replicates something on that square. But to the untrained eye, you wouldn't know it. And it's a brand new building, and it's sitting inside of a historic context. All of these things are viable. Any one of them is a reasonable solution to the problem that you're trying to overcome. And so what Jess is going to walk you through here this evening in a very schematic level is what 4 different options for addressing the needs of the city of Martinsville on this site might be, ranging from doing more with this building all the way to the other extreme, okay? So any questions on what we've presented so far this evening?
So you're saying that City Hall is sitting inside of the historical context, not that it's a historical building itself, but we're sitting inside of it?
It is inside the City of Martinsville Historic Downtown District.
So we must follow the preservation ordinance
We must,
for this building?
yes, because the ordinance for the Historic District has some stipulations of how buildings are to be maintained, how they're to be designed. There's even a provision for how to knock down a building and when that's appropriate and when it's not appropriate. Okay, so that ordinance, and I don't remember the number offhand, I think it's in the slideshow back a bit, it will guide what we can and cannot do. Chapter 94, Article 15, paragraphs 215 through 229 is the city ordinance that would govern anything happening with this building because it is inside that district.
So
it's not actually on the register, correct?
It is not on the
It's a
register.
contributing building.
It contributes to that district. So modifications are allowed as long as we follow the local guidelines. So essentially, you are subject to your own local guidelines.
But we could modify the ordinance, though.
It is your ordinance.
Correct.
It is your ordinance.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I turn it over to Jess? All right, Jess, if you can walk into those four options, and then we'll turn it over to the mayor and council.
All right, so I will be walking you through 4 options, and then at the end of these 4 options, you'll be able to see all of them up together, so we can have a discussion that Andy will be able to lead you through. But on this first option, we are showing that we do just a light touch renovation on the City Hall building. We stabilize the firehouse space, and we're going to put all of the operations in a new building, maintaining the slight renovation of some of the rooms here to be used as well. In that new building, you have a 5,000 square foot footprint. It's going to be able to meet all of your programmatic needs and have room for growth. I also want to show you on the right side here, I'm showing different levels. So we've got your lower level, your first, second, and third. On this option, we're showing that there's an option for a third level. We're not including that in the cost here, but if you do decide a third option is a third floor is what you would like, it's available here. Yeah, and then there's a lower level that is possible for future expansion. So that would be a shelf space. It would have an elevator stop and restroom rough-ins so that you could use that for office space in the future.
So this is part of the reason why Andy mentioned the kind of universal approach to this building, that there's dollars in each one of these options that you're seeing that will allow us to do what I will call paint up, fix up. If we want new carpet, if we want new paint, we want new ceilings, maybe we can swap out some light fixtures. But it's not representing a physical modification or restoration or renovation of the building, if you will. And that is true in all 4 options, so that there's funds within these project costs that you see in the lower left-hand corner. There's funds within each one of these options to be able to do that kind of work. Now, as Andy said, if we get a little further into this project and a direction is made, we can start to look at where do those dollars need to be allocated, where do we want to spend those dollars, where do we not want to spend those dollars. But for tonight, they're the same. It's over the entire square footage of the building.
Right.
And then there's some special pieces like Jess mentioned, stabilizing the firehouse. Those are some things that come and go depending on which option we're looking at. As you go through these 4, you'll see some differences in what's happening with the firehouse on the far end here. Good.
Before you move on, in the box on the left at the bottom, those 2 figures, I'm a great eye doctor, but I can't see. Was one the total, or do you have to combine them for the total, or?
So the first number is the construction cost, and the bottom number is the total project cost. So
Okay.
it's not a...
So that's
Right.
6.7 million?
Correct. Yeah, 6.7 is the
And
total.
So you'd have 1.2 million in soft costs.
correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
So for the benefit of everyone in the room, the construction cost is what we're currently projecting for this option would actually be the construction contract amount. So if you hired a general contractor, you publicly bid the work, and you had a contractor provide a number for doing the work, we expect that contract would be about $5.5 million. For anyone who's ever built a house or built a business, you also know that after the contractor is gone, there's a bunch of stuff that has to happen, right? At home, it's going to Target and being $5 to death, right? For this kind of a project, to put equipment into it, furnishings and equipment, data and video systems, maybe there's a telephone system, whatever all those things are that are required to make the project complete, that is in that difference between construction and project. Also in there are things like having the project reviewed by the state of Indiana, which is a requirement for all building projects, that projects go through Homeland Security. The state charges a fee for that. I'm going to guess that the building permit You probably know someone in the building department, and so maybe the permit's not part of that. But any of those other expenses, if there's surveys that have to be done, if there's abatement that would need to happen, whatever those things are, they fall in that difference from the 5.5 to 6.7. Does that, I don't mean to insult your intelligence or knowledge, but if you don't know those differences, that's why those two numbers are important. And the bottom one is the 6.7. That is the bottom line number that you would wind up having to provide financing for.
And
Thank
say
you.
You don't have any cost of the number 3 up there, that third story, you don't have the cost built in on that?
No, that cost is not built in here. It's just there to show you in the diagram that it's possible to have a third floor on that new building.
You have an estimate?
That's something we could get to.
So when you see shell space in these diagrams, it means that we're going to build the shell. In this particular case, that shell's on the lower level. It has foundation walls around it, obviously. It'll have services run to it, but it will be like walking into an unfinished basement, if you will. It's able to be finished out at a later date, but it's only a shell. When you see optional, and this will show up in the other 3 options that Jess will share with you, when you see optional, it means it's something that's possible, but it's not included inside these costs tonight, okay? If that helps explain that. Sorry, we won't go through this much detail on every option, but there's some kind of basic parameters that we want to establish here. Other questions?
All right, on our second option here, what we are proposing for this is that you would basically completely tear down the firehouse side of the building and put your addition there. So you would maintain the city hall portion on the south. The city hall would have a light renovation of paint, types of finishes. But then in your addition, you could get all of your newer features. We could put a lower level here and have your shelf space in that option. We could put the utility office on that first level and the clerk treasurer on the second level. On this option, we do not recommend a third level, so we did not show that here. It would utilize the existing courtroom space, and having this option with the new addition here, you would still have room for growth in the future.
A little bit of an editorial on why we didn't propose a third level on this is we have to manage the water that's coming off the existing building. So that would be the reasoning for that.
And this option also will start to tangle with that ordinance, okay? Because it's taking a part of the building and removing it in this particular option. You're going to see some other options in the next 2, but this one starts to tangle with that ordinance. The previous one does not, because it's a brand new building, so.
One other thing that happens in these additions is that we are able to start remediating the level differences, so it will help make your building more accessible overall.
Good.
So this is another option for an addition. So here we are going to be able to keep the historic facade of your building, including the firehouse, but it's doing a deep structural renovation of that 2-story level of the firehouse, and that's where the addition could be connected. We wouldn't really touch the 1-story later fire bay. That would be more just stabilized and act like a garage space. But we would still make these connections between the original city hall to this addition. We'd be able to solve any floor level issues and connect to the elevator. We're showing here that most of the program is between 2 floors. It would be on the first floor and the second floor. But if you wanted to do a basement or lower level option here, it would be totally possible, as well as a 3rd floor option, but we did not include that in the cost of this one. We're also showing that the footprint overall is just a little bigger on this one that has 5,000 square feet, because we're keeping the program to 2 floors here.
You had a good question earlier about, and we'll get you an answer to that, but one of the things we try to do is keep the programmatic square footage to these 4 similar. So the reason you've got some, they're not all just convertible, like, for instance, this one doesn't make for a good third story because of the water coming off the existing building, so there's a rationale to what we're doing. The apples part is a square footage basis, thus, we don't want you to think that there aren't modifications that can be made, because they absolutely can be if you're interested, and we can help with that. So we'll answer your question, and then I think if you had a similar question on this one, we could do the same thing.
So if you put a basement on that one, it'd be under that new addition and the peach or orange color, whatever, I'm sorry. How will that affect the structure of City Hall here and the
Yes.
partial basements, things that here? What will that do to that,
Yeah, it has to be
integrity
shored
of
up.
that?
Any addition we would be shoring up alongside a building, that's not served for our structural engineers to do it, but there is some small cost to be able to do that. It's the shoring of the existing building, so, yes, there's cost associated with it, and it is doable.
Thank you.
This option also tangles, actually all three of the options. Number one doesn't tangle with the city ordinance for the historic district, but these three options do, because we are connecting to, or in this case, kind of building within the existing building.
Yeah. All right, so this is the fourth option we'll show you. This is another way that we could connect to the building, adding an addition. On this one, we are simply stabilizing the firehouse side as well. So it would be maintained as like a garage type storage space. And then we would do the light renovations on City Hall, adding paint and finishes to your offices. We would connect more where your elevators are at, and then add the addition east. In this option, we think that it's possible that you could have a smaller footprint overall. So we're showing 3,000 square feet here, and we are going to your lower level and having a third floor here. On this one, again, your utility office would be on the first floor, clerk treasurer on the second. This one is showing a little bit of a different approach. So every building has a face. The face of this building might be more on Jackson Street as well as the parking lot. So you've got that option there. Yeah, you'd be able to have more space planning between City Hall and the addition, having those offices adjacent to each other.
One of the other things that's on this option, and also on the previous option that I don't think you touched on, is that I know there's been some conversation about the utility office. In all of these options, whether that utility office were to stay or go is an optional thing. First of all, the removal of it's not included in the numbers, but also there's nothing inherent about these scenarios, I don't think, that requires it staying or going. That is something that can be decided at a later date as to whether or not that building it remains in town. And then we're to the summary, right?
Yeah, let's pull up that summary if we could. And then what this does, and this helps me just to kind of put these side by side, this gives you a very brief synopsis of each of the four options on one slide, just so you can start to look at the cost part of it and just how they work on the site. So I think at this point, it'd probably be good if I turn this back over to the mayor and to the council, and we're certainly open to questions at this particular time.
Before I start on kind of a list I've jotted down here, any council people have anything to say at this point? Questions?
Mine's just a quick question. What was the square footage on the new facility on option 2? I missed that.
It's a 4,000 square foot footprint. So, and that's on two levels, right? The shell space. So we'd have shell on the lower level, and then you'd have 2 floors of 4,000 square feet.
What was it for option 1?
It's the same.
The last one was only 3,000, right?
But then it goes, it has an additional level, smaller footprint, but it has an additional level. Our cost included, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, a lower level and a third level in that one.
Correct.
And the third room was 5,000 square foot.
Yes.
5,000 square foot
Yeah,
footprint.
with 2 levels.
Correct. The two rooms.
Anyone else? I try to be, I'm disappointed in this presentation, to be quite upfront. We tried to make it clear that we repainted and recarpeted City Hall back in 2020. We put lipstick on a pig at that point. We needed someone to come in and tell us, you know, when we work in this building every day, the wiring is terrible. The HVAC is terrible. These windows all need replaced. I was hoping to get some numbers on things like that, because if we're really going to do a comparison of do we build a new building over here, or do we come in and rehab City Hall, I think that's what we need to know. And like Ben said, you really can't give us numbers on that until we know what we're going to do. And I understand that for a presentation point, but I thought we'd made, or at least I'd made myself clear that we need to redo this building.
Yes, respectfully, the initial request was for us to go ahead and look at a new build. And then when we did, I heard you about the fourth option. That fourth option does include what will happen is, let's take this room for example. If we were to redo that entire end, we don't believe that it would be wise to cut this particular room up and necessarily, let's take your offices. They could be shifted over there and we could repurpose what's here. So I respect, you're welcome to your opinion on that, but I believe that that we heard you, that we have two options that play to the north that would be very viable, that might take the pressure off of reworking a room like this and being able to reutilize it in its current format.
Well, I don't think anybody wants to see this room reworked or repurposed. We like it for what it is. It needs, and one of the things that was done in a study back in 2019, it said, you know, we need a separate fire escape, second exit out of this building. And again, I thought we made that fairly clear, because another thing that's so embarrassing in the current building we're in, we had a lieutenant governor the last 8 years that was a lady. She made several trips to Martinsville. Every time she had to go to the restroom, we had to give her a key, and it's a restroom here in the hallway. It's not the appropriate place. And I remember we talked, you said, well, we can put restrooms over in a new built part of the building, that's not a problem. But again, I don't see, this isn't anything more than what we kind of had before. I was hoping, I mean, we've got a lot of citizens here that wanted information, and I felt like this is information that we've already had. I'm sorry. Just, I don't know how the other council members feel, but that's.
I was not aware of what you had before, so.
Yeah, and maybe I take some of the blame for this. I mean, I thought the understanding or the request from the council was to give options on that. So we refined and added the garage per your request, so I guess.
And I want to let the mayor know, we would not have any issues with providing the stairs and the, you know, any kind of accessibility would not be an issue for us within the dollars that we've shown. Those are just details we're not to yet, because we would like to get the decision on, you know, 1 through 4, and then we would dive into that, but we would not leave you with a non-compliant situation whatsoever. We respect that request.
I think when we started this process, the option that we first wanted to see was option 1 originally.
I think it's important that we have the cost of,
Sure.
here is, you know, we asked about City Hall because it's gonna be expensive to rehab this building, and that's what I wanted to see, the cost of what it was. The mayor requested he wanted something done here, because I wanted to compare, is that cost gonna be cheaper just to put up the new City Hall, move it back here, still keeping this address facing forward and parking in the front? because I can't see spending more money to build a building and rehab this. It'd be cheaper to put up a new city hall. And I know that was one idea. And like, and my, you know, if we came to that, I would want something to mirror City Hall. I would not want a modern building inside what appears to look like this, replicates this building. Because I would like to see all services under one building, not having separate buildings on the lot. But I know it's gonna be hard to get cost of repairing the current City Hall.
We did get costs in, was it 2019?
Yes, that's been a while.
And it was a lot. That was before, you know, so we could
I
expect
think
this
that's
cost to
when
be
we
about
had
2x.
We looked at building the police station.
Mhm. And you start getting behind the facade and you start seeing wiring that doesn't go anywhere and just, the costs go exponential at that point.
Because Mayor, there's not been any change I'm aware of, that this HVAC system here is still not up to par, correct?
No, Mac, we did some work on it in 21, I think it was, and had to put in a couple new units, but it still doesn't operate efficiently. So if you were gonna redo this building, again, if you,
It was the ductwork that was the issue. It's not the units, it's not that. It's, this thing has been piecemeal. That can be corrected, because if we get rid of the lower ceilings, take it back to the way it was, you have that ductwork, that's the time then to redo the ductwork, because it'll be exposed.
I mean, again, like I say, we painted this room, Danny, what you paint this, 2 years ago?
22, I think.
Okay, and we didn't put new carpet in, but we put carpet downstairs. I mean, we've done some cosmetic things. We need to look at what can we do to this building? And again, I realize if it comes back, it's $10 million to renovate this building. I think all the taxpayers would agree that that doesn't make sense. If you can go build a new building and restructure City Hall. But I think we need to know about what it's gonna cost. And I know most and there's a lot of contractors in there tonight that probably wouldn't wanna touch trying to renovate this building. Because once you start, oh my, where does it stop? So, well, let's go ahead and let's ask if anyone from the public at this point would like to come up and say anything. Gary, you're not the public, but come on.
Good evening, Gary Oakes. I think you know my predisposed to a particular option, and that's getting rid of the firehouse bay. I've been in it. I've got it shored up right now because the floors were going down 4 inches, so there's shoring platforms back there right now. If you go to the back of the building, you'll see 4 different roof lines. It's an abortion as far as what architecturally we have. I've had conversations with Historic Landmarks and had them down to visit with us. As removing the firehouse bay would not be a problem. As we expand that direction, if we were to do that, we need to mimic the exterior that we have right here, and that's certainly possible to do. The brick that was used for the elevator tower that was put in maybe 20 years ago now is not the exact same brick, but it does a nice job of matching. And we'll be able, from the demolition of the firehouse, if we did so, recover some of the brick for that for the face of the building. So that would be the purposes for doing that, is coming forward with that. Certainly my predisposition is we all need to be in one building. None of us like to have to go down to the wastewater treatment plant to meet with Ben and his staff, or for Heather to come back and forth. Mac walks out there every single day, rain or shine. Being in one building makes sense for all of us. To accomplish that in the time frame that we have, the options you saw address this building. So it's going to be addressed no matter where you go in all of this. What we do is that needs to go, in my opinion, for that very reason. We can add onto that space, rebuild in the footprint that we have, save a few feet off the alley, give, whether it's 4,000, whether we decide in a review we need 5,000 square feet, certainly the footprint space is there to do whatever you should choose to do. So that would be my recommendation. Any questions for that?
Gary, you would agree though that if you did that, you're still gonna have to come over on this side and this needs overhaul.
Yes.
Right?
And there's money in each of those to do some of that. Now, the degree of that would remain to be seen, as I think John pointed out, why when you open up a building, you never know exactly what you're gonna find. We're experiencing that with the theater right now, but we're able to hold the costs. So it's a matter of understanding what you face, recognizing what the options are to get beyond that issue, and controlling your costs going forward. That's what we've got to do. Any questions?
Gary, I do have one question for you. How many square foot would you project is needed in the new building?
At one time, we talked 5,000, not 4,000.
Okay. So you would, if you were looking at the four options that were presented today, and not just doing a paint up, clean up over here, you would say option 2, and then do a little bit
Option
more, do more intensive in the current city hall.
Yes, we could review what we did that.
Thank you.
But it wouldn't be at that cost.
No.
At 7.9, I mean, we redo this side. That's why I think it's important to get that figure, so we do that comparison of the apples to apples, because I want to see that it's probably cheaper putting up a new building. I just, now's the time to look at things. I mean, we've built that new fire station, and that was part of the plans, the police station. Kind of gets a little out of order, but we got to look at the future. We can't build for today, the day's needs only. And what the mayor's talking about in the bathroom, I can go back a little further, and that would give the lieutenant governor the key. When that was done downstairs, we needed a bathroom. I mean, there was 2 female employees in the police station. We had about 3 in the clerk's office. But there's 1 bathroom for the males, and when they got that key, they made the males a unisex, and then the ladies' restroom was for ladies only. So that key's been under guard, only a female, so they had to give it to the night dispatcher, so she got to the bathroom. So that did, I mean, we shouldn't be operating like that, and that's the way it's been operating. And it needs, this place has a lot of issue. I know at one time they said that the roof couldn't support a new, more HVAC system up there. And those are my concerns, and as we all know, when you tear into an open place, that unknown, as you mentioned, the sweater coming unraveled, that's what's gonna happen. And so my fear is, I don't wanna start a project and we've got this number, and we think, hey, we can do this, and it's gonna wind up being cheaper to put a modern city hall in with the older look, and we plan for the future, get everything under one roof, so we have something to be proud of that's going to last for years. And that's how we designed with the fire station and the police station. And I don't want to, we've got the new water department, and I know that was due to weather, things that happened there, but it's been a long time waiting to get this project going. And as you said, the lipstick on the pig, I don't want to see us do that. It's going to have to be fixed and addressed down the road to begin with. So I think we need to plan for the future, not for the immediate. That's just my opinion.
Anyone else from the public?
Good evening, my name is Rick Dernall. I live at 339 South Ohio Street here in Martinsville. I do sit on the City Plan Commission, but I am speaking as a citizen this evening. Historic preservation is very near and dear to my heart. I'm going to read right out of our City Comprehensive Plan, page 31. The National Register of Historic Places is the official listing of the nation's historic places worthy of preservation. Martinsville's registered resources are part of its cultural assets that help define its character and appearance. The successful preservation of these resources is a critical economic development tool, can rally community pride, and generate tourism. Martinsville currently has 17 listings on the National Register of Historic Places. One of those 17 places is my home. And I have had people from as far away as Nebraska park in front of my home, take pictures, ask questions, and I cannot overstate the importance of history. We have an awesome historic district, 3 historic districts: East Washington Street, the North Side District, and the commercial downtown. In the residential historic districts, we don't have any restrictive covenants, which I think is a good thing. We do rely on the good judgment of the property owners to maintain the integrity of our historic structures. What I would ask is, as a city, if we're serious about protecting our historic landmarks, that we would lead by example. In my mind, it's not a question of should the council preserve this building. I believe it's this council's responsibility to preserve this building. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Beverly Ard. I know most of you. I don't know why I get nervous. I am just a big proponent of preservation. Preserving this building, I mean, look at this building. Look at the woodwork. And to think of the native lumber that you can't see, the structural integrity of this building. And preserving this building would be so in keeping with our courthouse and, I mean, a lot of the other buildings that have been mentioned already, our depot, the old jail. It's like the former speaker said, it's part of our history. It's part of what Martinsville is and was. When I was in school, some of the boys would come down here to this bay after we got out of school, and those firemen would feed them and see to it that they did their homework and mentor them. A lot of them didn't have great home lives. And this building is just, it's been important to Martinsville through the years. And that's my 2 cents worth. I just think it's beautiful structurally, and I think it's worth keeping and preserving.
My name is Rod Stafford, and I think we can do both. I think we can preserve the best parts of this building, and I think that we can remodel or remove the worst parts. Like, I've got over 40 years of history inside this building. Had family members and friends that worked in the fire department from the time I was a young man. I've been through the building extensively. This end of the building here is in much better shape than the firehouse end of the building. I think there's structural issues down there. I've seen separation, I've seen movement. So I don't think it's really in the best interest to remodel that end, and I get that. But anything we would do down there as far as to build new could be done to complement this. But historically, I think the building would be a travesty to tear it down. I think the water office back there, although it doesn't fit our history, it's new enough, it would be a travesty to tear it down. Because as a taxpayer, I have to look at the dollars and cents of this. And as a person that likes the history of my town, I want to look at the history of it. And then the third thing, I want to look at the functionality for the city, for the people who work here. So I think we can come up with a hybrid approach that we can keep the best parts and replace the worst parts. So That's my opinion, but I want to be sensitive to the taxpayer. There's a lot of grumbling right now. People are upset with their property taxes, and they're upset with what they're paying overall. And I think that it's, right now there's a lot of people upset over the tree removal.
That we was gonna tear this building down. You drive around town, there are certain buildings that's really iconic. The library's one, like the post office, the courthouse, those kind of buildings, we don't wanna tear them down. County's spending a lot of money to rehab the old courthouse. Can you imagine what that would look like if they just come in there and tore it down? And I think that sometimes buildings are worth spending money on. And I think this is one of those times to keep this town looking like it did to spend money on this building. The town is short on parking. So if you take this lot, turn it into parking, leave this building alone, remodel it, then that's my approach. That's what I think's the best. But it'll be up to you guys to decide. But the town needs more parking, and there's a lot right there that's available. And if you go back here and you build a new building, what are you gonna do with this one? You either let it sit here empty or tear it down. I don't see any other options. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Joe Hankins. I'm a local building contractor here in Martinsville, and I've been here since 1969. I'm for option 2. I've been through the building. I like the historicness of it, and I'm kind of getting discouraged with all the buildings that they're leaving. But I think the price could probably, with local contractors, could be done a little cheaper than utilizing Indianapolis contractors, out of town contractors. But like I said, what would they do? They tear this building down if they build a new one, or do they try and renovate it for a daycare or what? But I think it would be detrimental to tear it down or turn it into something other than it's been since 1912. So I'm for option 2. Thank you.
Anyone else?
One more thing.
As to Phil's concern about the HVAC, not being supported by the roof, an addition which would support its own HVAC and mechanical stuff on top of the new addition it wouldn't all be put over here and pumped over there. It would be on top of the new addition. So, and actually anymore, these HVAC units are more efficient. They're not being made bigger, they're being more made efficient. So if it was ever upgraded, it wouldn't be a huge weight on the system, in my opinion. So that's all.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Williams. I reside at 105 Jordan Court. And I first of all just want to thank you for your presentation. I thought you did a nice job. I like the options. I just would like to clarify something. Everyone's coming up here mentioning tearing down City Hall, but I didn't hear any one of them mention City Hall being torn down. So I don't really feel like that's the argument right now. There's nothing wrong with preserving it, maybe donating it to the Historical Society. I don't feel like we have to exclude. They're not exclusive. I do work for the clerk's office, and about 3 years ago, we were told we would be put at the wastewater treatment plant. It was a decision I believe the council made, if I'm not mistaken. And we have been there. We were told 9 months, and then, it's now been almost 3 years. And we have made the best of it. It's not the greatest location for the city clerk's office. But we are looking for new space, and we're putting our trust in you. You're the decision holders. You're the ones that we've elected. I am a city taxpayer, so one of the things I would like you to consider is that if we did renovate this and restore this and pour all of our money just into City Hall, if in 2019 it was outrageous, and we can't even remember the number, what's it going to be like in 2025, 2026, 2027, with costs rising? So that's just something I would like you to consider. I'm not going to say which option I want, because I know we do trust you to make the best decision, but I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you for coming to the workshop.
What is the plan for, if you build a new building, what's the plan that you guys have for this building? Don't know. What's the old jail, what is it now? I don't even know what it is. What did the old jail become?
It's apartments.
It's apartments? Okay. Maybe that's what this would be then, I don't know. And then, where is the scope of work for what would need to be done on this building? I mean, how did you guys, is there a 2019 scope of work for how you got estimates for the building available? It's the same thing you want to do now?
We could find copies of it somewhere.
What's that?
I'm sure we could find copies.
Okay. Well, I think if you're gonna spend that amount of money, I mean, I think the new construction cost is pretty in line. But I think it's only fair, cost per head or whatever, at least get some estimates. I don't know who those estimates were from in 2019. Was it local contractors or was it big construction companies up in Indianapolis?
I think it was a local.
Okay. Well, I think that would be good to have both of them side by side, and that may tell you if it's $3 million more to renovate this versus build over there, then maybe that's your answer, but.
I think it was like 10.
So I would be interested in seeing what needed to be renovated for here and what the cost would be versus what the new construction is. And then like I said, my issue is what this becomes. Is it just a, boarding house, again, or what, so that's all.
Well, I think, kind of answering back on Joe and what Ben said, I think the scope of work for this would be update the HVAC, update all electrical. If that was the time to run computer wiring or whatever, because the internet in here is terrible. New windows throughout. These windows are not very efficient. We probably should fur the outside walls and re-drywall those. So I don't see us moving rooms around because, like Ben said, and maybe it was Ark that mentioned to him, we really can't move the walls north and south. East and west you could, but you got to remember we have 3 vaults in this building that helps support. So our room design downstairs is basically going to stay the same, but you could refurbish it, take out the ceilings, put them back the way they were, get the transoms working again, and make them very interesting. And it's going to cost. It's not going to be cheap, but I don't think we're going to get into moving walls. The only thing we might do is put a cable from the east to the west side to keep the building from going out. I think Gary noticed that a few years ago. So as far as putting together a scope of work to get bids on and an idea, I don't think it would be that difficult. Now, I'm not a contractor, so ones that are in the room could be telling me, oh yeah, it's a lot harder than what you think. But I think we need, these are good questions, a good discussion we need to have, because to make the right, and again, we're never going to make the right decision for everybody, but to make an educated decision, we need to have all this information.
Do we have the information or the data to tell what the cost of maintaining this building is with staff in it, and what we would project the cost would be to maintain this building without staff in it, but just to maybe utilize this area or whatever what are the costs to maintain this building?
we can get you costs for maintaining the building currently, yes.
Utility-wise,
Yeah, utility-wise. If it was vacated, that'd probably be a little bit more of a challenge.
Well, let me help you understand the process now. We're asked how to get guidance, and I think you heard guidance tonight. You could do this as a design, bid, build, the old way of doing it. You could do it as a design, build. You could do it as a BOT, as we've just done the police station, where you're having some drawings up front. If you want to know costs, you have to know not just the general scope, you have to have some pretty specific information from an architect as what do you expect in the system, what are the expectations, how's it going to perform, what's your energy going to be, all these things need to come together. So you'll need to not just, hopefully for Monday, choose which option or how you'd like to go about it, but how you'd like to go about it, what your process would like to be. I can answer questions on any of those three if you'd like them.
Well, I think if we want to do more than paint, fix up, we're going to need additional information about what it's going to take to get true cost, right?
Yes.
Well, I think
Yeah,
that's,
we're gonna-
I'm sorry, go ahead, finish.
No,
Sorry.
that's-
No, that's why, I was trying to ask what we were wanting at City Hall. That's why I was wanting to know, what are we looking at? What would you like to see or to have? Because to find out what we need to do here, and that's what I say, because I just can't see spending the cost of double the buildings. That's when you might as well build one. And because it's gonna be too late when you start building and then we say, hey, I really like this instead. I'd like to move things here. That's why I wanted to know what is it we need here. I know what it was when we first began. As I said before, this was over 30 years ago. We had that plan. That's why we bought these homes and things out here to do this. And unfortunately, with catastrophic events and things, it moved things around because the original plan was at the Chrysler Building, we'd move the clerk's office over there again to get them out to remodel City Hall. It didn't happen. We ended up putting up the new fire station, and we redid the walls, reinforced, put weather standards at the Chrysler Square because that's where the police station was going to go, right next to it, the building that we had. But we put in all that money on it, and then we let it go. We had to tear it down, and then we ended up putting up the police station, and then we moved the clerk's office then down to the sewage treatment plant. This was supposed to have been the first thing remodeled so that we could do those other things. And that's why I say we've got things, in my opinion, backwards. But that's why we purchased back here. The original plan was to go out this side. The architect said it's too expensive because we got to be ADA accessible compliance, and we need another elevator because we need 2 entrances out of here. And that's what's kind of guided us, our directions in this building here. I know there's talk about the courthouse. It is a beautiful building, but I know that's why the county spent a lot of money over here for the judicial center because they're trying to get the foot traffic out of there for the public because it's not accessible to the public. And that's the same thing here. I don't want this building to be where it's not accessible, it's not meeting our needs for the public. And that's why we have to look at these things to make sure we're doing the right thing. But I don't want to spend double the money. It makes no sense. And as I said, and there's no offense to the clerk's office, I can't see putting up a $3 million building out back for one office, for the clerk's office. That doesn't make sense. That's not being wise with our money.
So Phil, is your vision then City Hall is the new building with clerk, utilities, the mayor's office?
Our city hall should have all the offices under it, so besides.
And then
obviously,
what
the
would be
police
your vision for this current structure?
I think what we need to determine first is what would be the true cost to renovate the structure. And so Gary, in those avenues that you just said, I think BOT, which one would give us the truest real world estimate at the end of the day of what it would cost to
If it was
renovate
my
the
money,
structure?
I'd spend $1 million on an architect to get design drawings, full set of specs, be ready to go out to bid. We don't have to be contained by that, but we then know what we think that we're going to build and what you're asking to have done at that point. The BOT process we just did at the police station, we did the set of drawings in advance on it, not construction drawings, but design development drawings. We were far enough along to get good numbers for that. The only downside that I think we've experienced for that is you let that contractor, and that's that case Envoy, manage the process then. So the subs that they chose were most beneficial to them. Where can I save the most money? Where can I still satisfy my owner? So that's the flip side of that. Sounds good. I think the school's going to do that, but there is a flip side that you have to recognize. Design build, the second of those three that I gave you, means you go hand in hand. You have an architect working with a chosen contractor that you prefer to work with, that your architect generally prefers to work with. And you work your way through your process at that. You don't necessarily know your costs up front. The only way to know your costs up front is design, bid, build. So.
But I think the first step we need to get to is the design part. I mean, I think we need some direction, all of us, on what the council, I mean, do we take this from 4 to 3, 4 to 2? What's the council's pleasure? Because at some point we have to get some of these drawings so we can bid these out to get hard numbers. But if we're, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're having 5 options, that gets very expensive very quickly.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Gary mentioned $1 million for an architectural fee to come in, but we're going to pay that soft cost no matter which way we go. So if we do it up front and we know what we want, then it's going to be better to get the bid. Somebody had mentioned something about property taxes, and again, the state is, a lot of discussions going on in Indianapolis right now, what's going to happen to the property taxes. Had a conversation with Jeff Peters last week, and we're going to get a hit, but it's not as much as what some are going to get. But we could still bond, correct me wrong, if I'm wrong, $6.7 million for this project. Of that, about $600,000 would go to soft cost for attorney fees and everything to get the bond through. So it'll give us about 6.1 to do a project. We've got about $3 million sitting in cash to take care of overruns. So, I'm looking now at option 3, 8.3. Well, that pretty much, that's going to take everything we've got.
That doesn't include the renovation on this side.
Yeah.
And that's where your costs are really is the unknown costs are.
And again, a lot of contractors in the room. How many of you would feel comfortable coming in and saying, if you were given a scope of work we wanted done, to be able to bid on this old building? Okay.
I think to be fair to them, we're going to have to give them what that scope is.
Right. Oh, yeah, most definitely.
I've got one more question. I can be getting into this thing, but it's to you guys. On option 1, I thought you said the footprint was 5,000 square feet. Is it 4,000 or is it 5,000? It's 5,000?
It's actually 4.
Okay, so it's a 4,000 square foot basement with 8,000 square feet above it. Is that right? So we're essentially doing the same size to this as an addition, right? A basement and two stories of 4,000 square feet to the end of this building. We're gonna get the same amount of office spaces in this addition as we are on the new building, right? And we still get to keep this building and renovate it for, what is it, 4? How many offices are downstairs?
It's a ghost town anymore since the police
Right now,
department's
we
come.
have 7 people in this building. Used to be, there were, at any given point in time, 16 in this building. We got 7 right now.
But this would stay a conference room, right?
Yes,
It's
this
gonna
is.
stay like this.
If it's $1 million more, it makes more sense to me to do this than that over there. Because if you have, would you have a conference room over there? Because
Yes, they were looking
use that square footage
they
for
were looking at
offices.
city council chambers to be over there along with,
You could use that square footage as for offices if you did that with a conference room like this versus if you kept this and you had the full 8,000 square foot offices over there, this is probably 1,000 square feet in here. So you're down to 7,000 square foot office over there, when you got 8,000 over here and benefit of all this other square footage over here. So, and maintain the historicness of the building, so. All right, so.
What's kind of the dollar amount that you would say for contingency for a structure like this that you've maybe seen in the past, you kind of allow for?
So it's built into those numbers, 15%. The Indiana University Purdue, they start out, they do about 1,300 projects a year, so they got really good data over the last 30 years. They find that if they start with a 15% contingency, that works out pretty well.
Is that
if you don't start with that, it's pretty low. So that is built into our number.
Is that, but what would your estimation be for like a renovation where you don't know what's behind everything versus, you know?
It's obviously going to be higher. And the other thing to remember about that 15% that what Andy is referring to is that includes both a design contingency for things that are evolving from between a conversation like the one tonight versus when we're ready to send drawings out for bid, like Gary was describing. And then there's also a construction piece. So the design piece is kind of the same regardless, right? Because it has to do with the decisions that this body is making. The construction contingency is obviously going to be higher on a renovation building because you're going to start running into more things. The new addition and even more so a new building is going to be low.
We usually see 10% on renovation and 4 or 5% on the
Correct.
building.
Is that pretty standard that you've seen?
That's what, in my previous life, we worked to those kinds of percentages. Doing not quite this, this is a relatively small building with the potential for some pretty significant issues, right? So it starts to crank that up.
Yeah.
There's less room to maneuver, right? So.
Thank you.
Well, I think the key is we need to keep discussion going on this because again, we need to get the clerk's office back up here, get them in an appropriate place to work. And Phil, like you said, 30 years ago, the discussion was started and something always came up to put it on the back burner. We can't do that. We've got to keep moving forward somehow. And that's why, you know, like we'll have something on the agenda for Monday night. And again, whether it's to have another workshop or try to maybe reach out to have ARC come back down and have more of a discussion with them on what we expect, or if you're ready to make a decision, one way or the other. And I think as Andy made the comment, we got 4 proposals, and we're probably not, you know, we're going to do a mix of something. These are just giving us, you know, a starting point to start thinking about everything. But to my knowledge, Phil, the city's never made it this far before on City Hall.
they had a drawing at one point with the extension, like I said, it was coming from this end, south end of the building going east. But, yeah, I mean, now's the time to move. And like I said, and we've got the plan for the future again, not just for today's needs, because it's gonna be too small, you know? We gotta make sure there's growth available. Because we've added some more offices since, and with Bob and the crew that are here. Yes, we lost the police department, fire station because they're in the buildings, but, you know, we've added some new offices on here, but we need to have everybody at the same building.
You know, I said 8 o'clock, it's 7:17. I don't want to make everybody stay till 8. So I mean, are there any other questions or comments? Because right now's the time to bring it up.
How much square footage are we not using in this building?
Probably 40% of the building. This building right now, the part we're not using is around 11,000 square feet. Total 11,000. So we're probably not using close to 40% of the building. We've got 7 people in this building. We move the clerk in with the new addition, that'd be 12 people. There's room for growth. Because we used to have 16 in here all the time, with the fire department, police department, clerk.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
When everybody was in here, a 16 plus.
Yeah.
We're not even close to that. We'd be at 12. The footprint of the fire bay is 47 by 55. If you build new there, a 2-story, you would be about 5,600 square feet, I believe. 5,600 square feet. We can build that for $3 million or less. So that leaves us $3.1 million to do what we need to do here. We're not moving walls. Yeah, there'll be some unknowns, but it'll be manageable.
That was the number 2 option was a 2-floor.
Yes, putting, take down the fire bays, which are not historic. They were never part of the original building. My wall was the outside wall. And put a 2-story there, total of 5,600 square feet, have a conference room on top that y'all want. The bathrooms that we need, the space, originally Ben said he needed 3,000 square feet. So we're gonna have more than enough room for the clerk treasurer, and plenty of room for growth.
I guess where I was going with that, you wouldn't have to finish the 2nd floor, just utilize the 1st floor, and then you got that to do later on, and that would take expense out of that.
We could do 1 floor, sure.
I mean, put 2 floors in.
Yeah, okay.
But don't finish out that 2nd floor.
Yeah. What I'm basing it on is about 500 a square. And you can do a commercial building for 5 square, for $500 a square.
So going back on the design, Phil, and you mentioned where they had the fire escape coming out, and we had to have 2 exits out of this building. If somehow we built a 2nd floor on top of the firehouse and had a hallway connecting over to that, would that count?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We are planning, one of the nice things, what we try to do is make all 4 of these doable, but one of the positives of that is if you take away the 2 additions that the gentleman talked about, now we can match up to those existing floors like they hadn't done originally. So now we would have, obviously have a stair tower on the other end.
I mean, I know Gary likes being up on the 2nd floor because nobody comes up here and bothers him and everything. But, I mean, if you had some kind of approach out of his office over to the 2nd floor, over to your office, I mean.
That is something I said of that option.
And again, I've got to kind of agree with Mac. We're not moving walls in this, and we're doing more than just cosmetic work to it, but the City Hall, it needs to be some things done to it if we're going to keep the building.
And I think those things need to be itemized out so we can get that cost, because without that, I mean,
We're just shooting.
it's hard to compare.
Yeah.
And we need to know those costs, because I think it's gonna drive some of what we're doing, what we can and cannot do.
So to that point, if you're looking at option, if you're comparing the options that have the additions, we have an apples to apples cost to that. So let's say depending on whether you want to go 60% in or 85% in, nobody has said we want to knock it down, but So is it possible to make a determination on which direction you want to go? I'm trying to understand what would help you make the decision. So for instance, if you would like, what we would do is get you the cost for, right now, the remaining portion that would not be affected to the north. And we could get you what we call a heavy renovation for the MEP, for the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and for, I think somebody brought up a good point, technology, those types of things, but not reconfigure the rooms on this end. We could get that cost to you and make sure they're embedded in those options, and then you can take a look at it. That'd be helpful.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah, but
Yes.
when you say not reconfiguring the rooms, you talking about downstairs?
Talking about essentially this original building, downstairs and upstairs.
Downstairs gotta be, that's the problem right now. They're talking about all the wasted spaces because it's not designed. His office wasn't designed for one person. You don't have a room that big. You got,
So
I think you
want to reconfigure first.
I think you have, but that's why I say it's important that the City Hall tells us what they'd like to see. Just like I said, we didn't build a fire station without consulting with the firemen or the policemen. It'd be silly for us to design the City Hall for them without their input. We need their input to find out, just like with the clerk's office, what they need, their technology and everything they need, their storage for files and whatnot, and it's important that we have that. And I think that's the only way we're gonna get it. We need to know, because I don't see how we can compare these without having this done, because this place does need, and it's not just painting and carpet, it needs a lot of work. The squad room could be designed differently, where there's more than just an open space for the office. The police chief's office coming in, you got your inner way, the 3 ways going in here. This space is just designed wrong. The old police station used to be a countertop, and they just boxed that in. There's so much more that you could do down there, and that's what I'm saying. So in my opinion, there is a lot of wasted space. It's not because our employees are out here, it's because it's not designed properly and how it needs to be done. And so I think you need a cost of that, but that's where input is needed. I'm sure, Bob, you're working out of the fire department, the old day room, as we call it. I mean, we've got a garage here that's just open space, and I know we're sticking some things in there for storage, but it's become a storage unit.
But I think right now, what council doesn't realize, Bob is moving out of the day room. He's going to take the police chief's office. Lisa and our new code enforcement person will be in the dispatch area. Now, would it be nice to have that floor lowered down and that window configured? But I don't think we need to move walls. Mac is probably going to go where the
And that's
squad room
important
was.
to know, and I like that, and that's what we need. I mean, I remember when they put in that boss floor downstairs in the police
But I
station.
think if we put the new restrooms in the new part, if somebody comes in, where's your restrooms? Oh, they're over here. We could take this ladies' restroom and make that a cleaning storage closet or whatever.
Yeah.
Be centrally
You
located.
need more than one urinal, more than one toilet in the restroom, and the downstairs, the basement, the hub here with the old evidence room and the phone service and everything. I mean,
Oh, those wires need all pulled out.
it's,
You all
yeah,
look at
it's
Ben showed me underneath the.
wait, I mean, that's the problem here. We have so much wasted space. It took forever, to get those doors opened up for court back there. I mean, that was storage, those bins, we have bins like that over here. It's just wasted space, and it needs to be user-friendly and modern, where it's used, not just walking in an open room.
Fundamentally, the building is being used differently than when it was originally built. And so it needs to be
Absolutely.
reworked in a lot of different ways to meet current needs and future needs as well. One of the things that has struck me as I've listened to this is I always think when bodies such as yourself are trying to navigate these questions, more often than not, I find that these groups, one of the things you're trying to do is not only provide for the current, but also leave for the people that are going to be following you in the future, not backing them into a corner where they don't have good options, right? So anything we would do needs to be thinking not only about today's needs, but also if something changes, because it will change, how will this building continue to serve the community into the future in ways that don't force you, really the city, not you, because it's your successors, to have to completely redo something. That's part of the problem that you're struggling with tonight, right? Is you've got a building that doesn't meet your current needs, and it's hard. It's hard to change that.
Gary's office.
If I may
Gary's
tag,
office.
if I may tag on to what he just said, talking about the future, there's not been any discussion tonight about security. One of the biggest issues in this building, there is no security. The mayor's office is one step, basically, inside this door. Thinking of the future, things are changing out in the world. The mayor's office needs to have at least 2 or 3 levels of separation from the front door. We don't have that ability in this building. We have no way to protect the staff in this building. Folks, I'm basically the first person who's going to go if something goes down in this building. That's okay, but there's no protection in this building for the people who work here, and that has to be taken into consideration. And if you keep the footprint that you have now, you're not going to have the space to be able to do that.
Exactly, and that's why I say it's important to get your inputs. You know, Gary's office housed 3 officers. 3 officers. We shared that office, connected to the fire chief and the assistant chief. You know, there was 5 of us in this room that you've opened up for. Gary's got a large office, and kudos to you, but that's what I'm saying, we got space that it's not utilized, not set up for the offices. You know, there's a bathroom up there in that section, I think our shoulders can touch the walls walking there trying to use the restroom. So, you know, the clerk's office, or the court office here, that was the fireman's kitchen. You know, it's not been designed for an office thing. That's what I'm saying, we've got the bunk room back there. It's not set up like it should be, and that's why I say it's important. If we're wanting to keep this building, then we need to know what needs to be done, because then we need to go out at full bore if you're wanting to save this building, because that's what's happening in the courthouse. That's why they're putting offices in there, so that the public doesn't have to go in there, because they can't do it. It's too expensive. We're not as large as the courthouse, but if people are serious and they want to keep this building, and kudos. This design right here, my father's mayor had this design and started the building trades in high school. That's history, and you know, we'd obviously want to keep this, but that was designed by him. Had the building trades people in here, and it's finished up by another. They had to have someone else come in and finish it up, but that's part of the history, and it's good. It's great to keep this, but it's got to be functional, and that's why I say it's important for the input, so we know what is needed. Because you're right. There's a lot of wasted space here, and we have less people, but it's because the space is not utilized properly. And we need serious designs so that we can get everything that we need.
I have one question on option 1. It's 2 stories and a basement, right? So it's a total of 12,000 square feet. Are you planning on putting offices in the basement?
No, the way it's designed now, it's just open shell space.
But you would put people in the basement?
So 2 things on that. Mac, originally, before they were able to put their files on, not microfiche, but digitized the files.
Right.
The clerk's office has a ton of files, and that was gonna be a lot of storage space down there. But that's what I said, in my opinion, and someone can get mad or not, but the courthouse annex, or not the annex, the administration building, downstairs, they put those offices in at a later point. You can tell. We'll take a look at the office, how they got it. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that we're playing just an empty basement and, oh, we can put it up later. No, now's the time. You're spending the money. Now's the time to get the best bang for the buck, because the prices only go up, continue going up, and it needs to be designed where you can put something or offices down there, or however you want to do it. But I disagree with just leaving it open space.
If the basement is basically storage or whatever, I don't see you putting people down there. Then for option 1 to really truly be viable, it's got to be 3 stories. If we're going to put everybody in that building, you got to build three levels, 3 floors, because that's the space that it's going to take. You're talking about building the future. That's only going to take care of what we need right now. So the cost of poker on that one is going to be between $9 and $9.5 million, option 1. Just know what you're getting into.
And, okay, I'm trying to think how I want to word this, so if I mess up halfway through, I'll start back over. But you can, ARC Design, after hearing what we've had to say tonight, you could come back and you could give us a price on what option one would be to build a 3-story facility. We'd have, the lower level would just be storage. Or if somebody misbehaves, we'll send them down there. We need to look at what, because if we go that route, someone had mentioned, you know, we can give this building to the Historic Society. But again, we're going to need parking. And parking is a premium for anything downtown. So if we could get a price on what it would cost to tear this down. The other thing I'd like to see you come back with is let's look at our option 2. And let's, you know, you kind of heard us talk about, okay, we need to do some things to this building. You've got a pretty good idea of what this building is like on the inside. Go out and give us, and we're not going to hold anybody, you know, to a specific number. We need to have an idea, you know, to come in and put in all new windows, to put insulation, fur things out, put drywall, redo all the wiring. If that comes back to be $10 million, then we've got to do the addition. Well, okay, then we don't have enough information to make a really sound decision. And that's, again, what I was kind of hoping we'd have tonight. But then again, we've had, first time we really have a lot of good discussion, a lot of good input on what people want.
But they're obviously gonna have to meet with each of these departments.
But we can't say, okay, let's put this on, we'll have another meeting in a month. No, we need, again, we'll have it on the agenda Monday night, have another determination where we're gonna have a meeting. We need to keep this in the forefront moving on. So, I don't know how quick you can turn something around, but you don't have a month to do it.
I guess the question I have on the renovation of City Hall, are you wanting to not move walls? Because it sounds like you want to move walls, so.
Oh, boy, that's like,
If I can interrupt for a moment, what I think I'm hearing as part of all this, by the way, so noted on not having a month. I'll talk to Andy. I think what I'm hearing, part of what you're asking for is really 2 prices. One that says, even if no walls change, we know there's some systemic things that need to be corrected in this building. What is that number? And then there's another number that says, and especially on first floor, not so much on this floor, but especially on first floor, if we did want to do some reconfiguration to be able to make some things work more efficiently and effectively, what would that cost be? And so the full-blown thing is those 2 numbers added together, and then now this group has the ability to make some choices and decisions based upon some data about what's happening inside this building.
and not just some, you know, theoretical number out there, you know, bring it back to where it's workable. You know, something that's going to be reasonable. I don't want to say, you know, to redo this is, in your cost estimate that we make a decision on is $5 million, and we give it to some of the contractors what the scope of. Well, no, we could have done that for 2.5. So we need reasonable numbers, reasonable, accurate numbers.
He says yes, so yes. Part of my hesitation in answering that is that at this point, at least I feel like part of our job is to establish the outer envelope, whether that's what the building's going to be or how much it's going to cost. But I don't know that we've had good conversation to know what the expectation is for pricing things. So when you say that, with all due respect to the contractor people in this room, what they are thinking may be perfectly fine. It may or may not be aligned with what you're expecting. You know, maybe to get to some of those numbers, can it be done? Yes, it can. The question is, what are you going to want to wind up with for a building? Is it something that, can you make it less expensive? Yes, you can. In 10 or 15 years, you'll probably regret it. Can you do a 100-year building? Yes, you can. It's gonna cost a lot more. Neither one of those is a bad, I'm not saying that any of those are bad suggestions or price points to be at. But we, I think, feel that our job is to make sure that we're giving you an envelope that is reasonable to get done, what you want to get done, to give you and the community a building that they're willing to live with over time. It's just, it's decisions, right? I used to think of this as there's rarely a bad decision other than no decision at all. It's just making sure that we're making as informed a decision as we can. That is meeting, someone else said here this evening, whatever the decision is, not everyone's going to be happy, right? But at least it's being made in a logical way that most people, even if they don't agree with it, will say, yeah, it was a thought-out decision as opposed to a knee-jerk reaction. If that makes any sense at all to you.
No, I agree, I agree with you.
Mayor,
We're all put.
I want to make sure that we are clear. I've heard potentially of heading down two paths for additional information. The one is the new build, making sure it has the lower level roughed in and a third story complete, using the number on that. And then option B, but would have then what John said, both the systemic items and the finishing. Are we, and I'm not making a value judgment, I just want to make sure we're clear. Are those the two that you want us to bear down on in the next week? Because we can, candidly, we can move faster if we shorten that.
I know we can't make a decision, but we can kind of tell you those
Yeah,
two
yeah,
options.
because this is the first time we've heard of the third story on that one for a new one. We've heard the basement, first and second floor. And then they're saying add a third. Is that something the council is interested in looking at, the cost?
I mean, you know, the options are, what does it cost for a new facility versus what does it actually cost to renovate this properly that's going to last the same length of time as a new facility? You know, so it's configured in the appropriate, structure. So, you know, we can compare apples to apples to that. And, you know, if this is this cost.
I think we should probably then, if everybody's okay with it, because it gets to what you were getting at on the programmatic, we should make those programmatic square footages the same as much as we can.
Yes.
Obviously, there's some waste downstairs, even if we reconfigure, there's some
Well,
waste
and I was concerned you talked about the lower, but you do the upper here as well, right? I mean, because, you know, kitchen turned into the city clerk's office with the louver doors sliding out. I mean, that's not an office. That's not a proper way to do security.
So the number you're going to be bringing back will be heavy renovation with mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and the reconfiguration?
It's two separate numbers, so you can be looking at both of those.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
What's helpful if we look at just that on option B, what's helpful is we have helped ourselves because not half, but let's say 40% of the building is going to be new regardless. And so there's some clarity there in terms of what we need to scope out. So we appreciate that. That helps expedite things.
So we're not looking at option 2, then we're just heavy renovating this option?
No, option 2 was,
Okay.
Option 2 is this.
yeah, option 2 with heavy renovation on this.
Okay. That's what I thought it was.
And do we agree that the basement to be finished over here? All right, I mean, if you're gonna put offices in, what's the route? I mean, finishing the basement with two floors, or are you going 3 stories and not a basement?
Well, I think that's your request. The last thing we had heard is a basement that's really just kept for storage and a third level complete.
The basement's your cheapest square footage, but, do you want to put people down there or not?
Well, that's what I thought, but since their storage requirements have changed, that's what I'm saying, I would finish that basement. I wouldn't go like they did at the administration, and then later, hey, let's put up these walls here. I mean, it looks piecemeal, and it's not privacy. They don't have total privacy down there in those rooms.
That's contrary to the information we had building the police station just recently. We wanted a basement. We ended up with a basement, but they continually said, it's more expensive to build a basement than it is another floor on top of here. So just so you understand, our perception is not necessarily the contractor's perception of what it's gonna cost to do. So, there's two different things out there. And I want to drop back to the fact that Ben gave you the information on what we could bond, what we have in cash, and what I want you to encourage you to do is do the right thing. You want to be proud of what you've done 50 years from now, 30 years from now, if you live that long. We've got to do the right thing in this, looking ahead, as Mac pointed out, to what our future needs might be, how we can best accomplish that, and how we can efficiently do that. We've got to be a transition. Some of us are going to be working in here while this is all going on, whether it's out there or over here. We have to do it appropriately, manage it well, and be able to have a time frame that we all understand. It's a budget we understand. You don't go buying a Ferrari if you can't afford a Ferrari. But you have to know what you can afford and what you can do and what we can accomplish for our taxpayers right here in town. We've got half a dozen new buildings we've built since then, and this is the last one, and we need to do it right. There shouldn't be any question about how we do it. You need to make that decision. You need to be certain that you've investigated all the possibilities, asked the right kind of questions like you're asking tonight. Make sure you get those questions answered. Don't leave something hanging that you don't know about.
Any other comments from anyone in the audience?
I have one thing. Just listening to everything in the presentation, to me, it seems like a scope of work needs to be honed in on. How many offices do you actually need? How much square foot do you actually want? It seems all over the place to me. And with these kind of decisions and the amount of money and the materials and all that stuff, it just seems to me like some discussion needs to be done about what you actually want so that they can provide better answers for you, because it seems to me like we're just throwing something up and throwing a pin in it, that's what we want, rather than actual giving them like requirements of what you guys actually want and actually need in this building, and thinking about the future and growth. So just my 2 cents.
No, that's good, and that's why I requested they meet with each department, because I've asked before, I need the City Hall's input as to what they want and would like to see, because it's very important. That's why I said we didn't design the fire station or police station without their input. That'd be silly. We're not the ones working here. They are the ones, and that's why we need their input, the clerk's office, everyone's, so we can make sure that we're getting what they need, because now is the time to do it if we're doing it, not to go back and redo. Thank you.
Any other comments from the council? All right. Again, I want to thank everybody that came out this evening from the public to help us with our decision-making process. Arc Design, I think, appreciate you coming down, and look forward to hearing from you within a month. Sorry. Thank you.